So, hello everyone. As you know, my name is Rex, and in our computer subject, today we will talk about computer memory. This is our topic name. So, guys, let's first understand what is computer memory. So, as we know, computers are designed to perform a wide variety of tasks, such as solving mathematical problems, processing business transactions, browsing the internet, editing documents, playing multimedia content, and running software applications and storing valuable information. And we should know to perform all these operations efficiently, a computer requires a dedicated component which can store data, instructions, and processing results. This essential component is known as computer memory. Computer memory is one of the most fundamental and indispensable component of a computer system, and we can say that if we talk about its definition in simple way, so we can say that it is an electronic storage component of a computer system that stores data, instructions, programs, and processing results so that they can be accessed and used by the central processing unit whenever required, and it provides the necessary space for holding information during the processing, as well as for preserving important data for future use. So you should understand about the facts, or you can say information about computer memory. And you can say that in other words, computer memory serves as the storage area where all the information required for performing various computing tasks is kept. In this, every instructions executed by the processor, and every piece of data entered by the user, and every result generated after processing must be stored in memory at some stage. And we can say that without memory, the processor would have no information to process, which makes the operation of a computer impossible. Also, this computer memory is act as a communication bridge between the processor and the storage devices. It ensures that the CPU re- receives the required instructions and data quickly, which enables the program to execute efficiently and without any unnecessary delays. Also, this if the memory is faster than that time, it allows the processor to work more effectively, which directly improves the overall performance of the computer. Now, we should know computer memory is further classified into two parts: primary memory and secondary memory. Now, we will first discuss about primary memory. Let's start. So, guys, primary memory, also known as main memory or internal memory, and it is the memory which is directly accessed by the central processing unit, and it stores the data, instructions, and programs that are concurrently that are currently required by the processor for execution. And since the CPU communicates directly with primary memory, this it provides very high speed access to information, which enables the computer to execute tasks quickly and efficiently. And whenever a computer is switched on, the operating system is loaded from secondary storage into primary memory. Similarly, when the user open an application such as web browser, word processor, media player, or programming software any, the application is first loaded into the primary memory before it begins execution. And here, the processor continuously reads the instruction from this memory, and it performs the required operations and then writes the result back into the memory whenever necessary. Apart from that, unlike secondary memory, this one primary memory is designed mainly for active processing rather than permanent storage. It stores only the information which is immediately required by the CPU, and once a program is closed or the computer is turned off, the contents of volatile memory are erased. And if we talk about secondary memory, their information remains stored in the memory. So, apart from that, primary memory is considered the working area of computer. Why? Because almost every operation performed by the CPU depends upon the information stored within it. And without primary memory, the execution, sorry, the processor would have no place to obtain instructions, which makes the execution of programs impossible. Now, we should know why we call primary memory a main memory. So, as we know, it is commonly referred as main memory because it serves as the principal storage area where the processor performs all the computing operations. And in this, every programs, operating systems, component, and piece of data being processed must first enter this memory. Which memory? Primary memory. Before the CPU can execute it. And it acts as the primary workplace of the computer, which enables the processor to access information rapidly without depending on slower storage devices. And since all the major processing activities take place using this memory, it is known as the main memory of the computer. So, we should also know why we need primary memory. So, the need for primary memory can be understood with some points like it helps in executing program efficiently. It provides immediate access to data. It also helps in supporting real-time processing, and it also helps in reducing the processing time, and it also support multitasking, which means we as a user we can perform multiple tasks at the same time and with a much better speed. Now let's talk about RAM. Primary memory is also further classified into two types, RAM and ROM. Let's first discuss about RAM. So guys, RAM stands for random access memory. It is a type of primary memory, as we know that, okay, which temporarily stores the data, instructions, and program currently currently being used by the computer, and it is the main working memory of the computer where all the active processing takes place. And whenever a user opens an application, just imagine, and then starts the operating system or edits a document, watches a video, or perform any other task, the necessary information is first loaded into the RAM before it is processed by the central processing unit. RAM, which stands for random access memory, serves as a high speed communication medium between the processor and the secondary storage devices. Instead, and you can say that instead of accessing data directly from comparatively lower storage devices such as hard disk drive, HDD, or solid state drive, the processor first transfers the required information into RAM. And once the information is available in RAM, the processor can access it much more quickly, which helps in allowing the programs to execute efficiently and without any unnecessary delays. Means that one of the most important characteristics of RAM is that it is volatile memory. This means that it retains data only while the computer receives electrical power. As soon as the computer is turned off, restarted, or experience a power failure, all the information stored in RAM is automatically erased. Therefore, RAM is used only for temporary storage during active processing, while permanent information is stored in secondary memory. So remember that. Maybe you can use it as difference also between these memory. So also one thing here, some points you may think repeat means some points can feel like repeated in other types. So just think about that and make your own notes after watching this video. Now what I was saying, yes, because of its high speed, because of RAM high speed, direct accessibility by the CPU, and the ability to store active information temporarily, RAM is considered as one of the most important hardware component which is responsible for the performance of a computer system. A computer equipped with sufficient RAM can run multiple applications smoothly and can execute programs more quickly and can provide a faster and more responsive user experience. Now, why we need RAM? So again, we can it helps in executing program more efficiently, and it also helps in storing the active data. Means during the program execution, user continuously generate new information by typing text, editing images, performing calculations. RAM temporarily stores all the active information so that the processor can process it, okay, immediately without repeatedly accessing slower storage devices. So you can say that for temporary work, RAM is much better than secondary storage devices. Apart from that, it also helps in improving the processing speed. As we know, one of the primary reasons for using RAM is to increase the overall processing speed of the computer, because RAM operates much faster than hard disk or SSD, and the processor spends less time waiting for data because of this. This allows the programs to execute more efficiently, and again, it also helps in supporting, or you can say that it supports multitasking, which means user can perform multiple tasks at the same time. A user can edit any document, or can play a video, or can browse the internet at the same time. Apart from that, it also improves the user experience. So these are some points that explain why we need RAM. Now let's talk about types of RAM. I know it will be a long video, but at least you will get the content that can help in your exam, or maybe you can learn them these points for your interview. Depends on you. So RAM is further classified into SRAM, and DRAM. So in this, SRAM stands for static random access memory, and DRAM stands for dynamic random access memory. So this SRAM, it is a type of RAM which stores the data using flip-flop circuits instead of capacitors. Once a bit of information is stored in an SRAM cell, it remains stored as long as electric power is supplied to the memory. Unlike DRAM, SRAM does not require periodic refreshing to maintain its storage stored data. And this word static in this means that the stored data remains stable without needing continuous refresh operations. As a result, SRAM provides much faster access to information than DRAM. This and its high speed makes it suitable for application where the processor requires immediate access to frequently used data. And because SRAM is faster but more expensive and occupies more physical space, it is generally used in small quantities as cache memory rather than the main memory system. Now, let's talk about DRAM, which stands for Dynamic Random Access Memory. So, DRAM, as we know, it stands for Dynamic Random Access Memory. It is a type of RAM which stores the data using tiny capacitors and transistors. And in this, each capacitor stores a single binary bit by holding an electrical charge. However, because capacitors gradually lose their charge over time, the stored information begins to fade. And to prevent the data loss, DRAM must be refreshed at regular intervals, typically thousands of times every second. During each refresh cycle, the stored electrical charge is restored so that the data remains intact. Although refresh, refresh operation makes the DRAM slower than SRAM, its simpler design allows much higher storage density and lower manufacturing cost. So we can say that it is much cheaper than the SRAM. Just think it as difference. And DRAM is used as the main memory or system RAM in almost all the personal computers, laptops, smartphones, and servers. Now, primary memory section is completed. Let's talk about secondary memory and its types. Sorry, I forget about ROM. It stands for read-only memory, and it is also a type of primary memory which permanently stores important instructions which required for the basic operations of a computer system. And unlike RAM, which temporarily stores data and loses its content when the power supply is turned off, ROM is a non-volatile memory, means it retains its stored information even when the computer is switched off or disconnected from the power source. ROM, read-only memory, primarily contains a special type of software known as firmware. A firmware is a you should know is a set of permanent instructions that controls the basic function of computer hardware, and these instructions are essential for starting the computer, checking the hardware components, and preparing the system to load the operating system. And whenever a computer is powered on, you should know the processor does not immediately load the operating system. Instead, it first executes the instructions stored in ROM, and these instructions performs several important tasks such as checking whether the processor, memory, keyboard, storage devices, and other hardware components are functioning correctly. Only after these checks are completed, then that time system proceed to load the operating system from secondary storage into RAM. And unlike RAM, the contents of ROM are not modified during normal computer operations, and the information stored in RAM remains fixed for long periods because it contains only those instructions that are essential for proper functioning of the hardware. And in modern computer guys, ROM can sometimes be updated using special software tools Apart from that, ROM is indispensable component of every computing device, as it is found not only in desktop and laptop computers but also in smartphones, tablets, printers, routers, televisions, digital cameras, etc., and even in gaming consoles. So we should know why it is called read-only memory at least. The name read-only memory comes from its original design and purpose. During normal operation, the processor mainly reads the instruction stored in the memory to perform the essential system functions. Unlike RAM, users and application programs cannot normally modify or overwrite the content of ROM while computer is running. The information stored in RAM is either programmed during the manufacturing process or written using specialized programming techniques. Since these instructions are intended to remain unchanged for a long time, ROM is referred as read-only memory. Okay, now we will talk about secondary memory. Sorry for the late. Let's start. So, secondary memory, guys. Secondary memory, also known as auxiliary or the auxiliary memory, external memory, or secondary storage, and it is a type of non-volatile memory which is used to store data, programs, and information permanently, and it retains its content even when the electric power is switched off, which makes it suitable for long-term storage. And unlike the primary memory, secondary memory is not directly accessed by the CPU. Whenever the processor needs information stored in secondary memory, remember that the required data is first transferred into the primary memory. The CPU then accesses the data from RAM because RAM provides much faster access than secondary storage device. And this secondary memory provides significantly larger storage capacity than the primary memory, and it allows the users to store operating systems, software applications, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, images, videos, many kind of data, and backups, or you can say different types of digital information. And we can, if we talk about another important advantage of this memory, we can say that is its cost effectiveness as compared to RAM. Secondary memory storage provides more storage space at lower cost per gigabyte, and this makes it practical for storing the enormous amount of information generated by the modern computer users and organizations. And we can say that in simple words, secondary memory is the permanent storage area of a computer where information remains safely stored even when the computer is turned off. Okay, I hope you understand that. Now, let's know why we call it secondary memory at least. So, the term secondary memory this is used because this memory serves as a secondary storage area after primary memory. The processor, as you know, first relies on primary memory for active processing, while secondary memory store information that is not immediately required by the CPU. So, whenever the user wants to execute a program, open a document, or want to perform any other operation, then that time the required data is transferred from the secondary memory into primary memory. Since it supports the main memory by providing permanent storage, it is called secondary memory. And why we need it? So, we need it because it helps in storing data permanently. It also helps in storing large amount of information. Remember this point. And it also support the installation of operating system and software. There can be different kind of software that can be installed in the computer to the inside this secondary storage. And it also helps in the preserving user files. As you know, every computer users creates and stores valuable digital information such as assignments, office documents, presentations, project files, photographs, videos, and personal records. Secondary memory ensures that these files remain safely stored for months or even years. And this permanent preservation of users' data makes the secondary memory indispensable for education, business, entertainment, and scientific research. I, I hope you understand that this. And it also helps in performing data recovery and or take backup of the data. Apart from that, it also support modern multimedia applications. As you know, today's multimedia application involves high resolution photographs, full HD and 4K videos. Also, I hope you know that. And professional audio recordings, also animation projects and virtual reality content. And these files requires enormous amounts of storage space that cannot be accommodated accommodated by primary memory. And here, secondary memory provides sufficient capacity to store and manage these multimedia resources. Now, let's talk about its types. So, secondary memory, guys, is further classified into magnetic storage device, optical storage device, and solid state storage devices. So, let's first talk about magnetic storage device and its types. So, magnetic storage device are the storage devices that perform that record and retrieve information by using magnetic fields. And these devices store the data by magnetizing tiny regions on a magnetic surface. And in this, each region represent binary information 0 and 1, right? So you know, which the computer interprets as the digital data. And this magnetic storage has been one of the oldest and most successful storage technologies in the history of computing. And for many decades, it served as the primary method for permanent data storage because it offered high storage capacity, reliable performance, and relatively low cost. Although solid state storage devices this are becoming increasingly popular due to their higher speed and durability. Magnetic storage devices are still widely used because they provide large storage capacity at an affordable price. Data centers, businesses, educational institutions, and home users continue to rely on magnetic storage for storing large volumes of information. So, the most common magnetic storage devices includes SDD, Floppy Disk, and magnetic tape. SDD stands for hard disk drive, and as you know, it is a magnetic storage device which permanently stores digital information using rapidly rotating magnetic disk called platters. And it is one of the most widely used secondary storage device in desktop computers, laptops, servers, and external storage systems. I'm talking about this. Okay. So, what I've seen, yes, HDD stores operating systems, application softwares, user files, multimedia content, databases, and one kind of information. Backups, unlike RAM, which stores information temporarily, the data stored on HDD remains available even after the computer is turned off. As I said, many lines will be repeated. I hope you understand. Okay. Also, HDD as we know, have been used for several decades because they provide large storage capacities at relatively low cost. Just take it this point as advantage of HDD. And modern HDDs are capable of storing several terabytes of information, which makes them suitable for users who require large amounts of storage for documents, photos, videos, games, scientific data, and business records. Although SSDs are gradually replacing HDDs. So, next is floppy disk. So, guys, floppy disk was one of the earliest portable storage devices which used in computers before the invention of modern storage devices such as USB flash drives and SSD. Apart from that, we can say that if we talk about its definition, so it is a magnetic storage device which is used to store and transfer digital data. It consists of a thin flexible magnetic disk which enclosed in a protective plastic cover, and data is stored on the magnetic surface of the disk and can be read or written using floppy disk drive. Floppy disks were portable, reusable, and easy to use, which makes them the popular for personal and business computing at that time. However, they offer very limited storage capacity and slow performance. They were eventually replaced by the more advanced storage devices that we know: CD, DVDs, USB, flash drives, and SSDs. This. So, next is optical storage devices. Let's talk about that part. Oh, yes, magnetic tape. Also, so magnetic tape is one of the oldest secondary storage device which used for storing large amounts of digital data. It is mainly used for backup, data archiving, and long-term storage rather than everyday data access. And we can see that it is a secondary storage device that stores the, I'm talking about its definition, so you can write if you want to. So we can say that a magnetic tape is a storage secondary storage device which stores data on a long thin plastic strip coated with magnetic material, and in this information is recorded as magnetic patterns on the tape and can be read or written using a tape drive. And unlike hard disk, magnetic tape use sequential access, which means that the tape must move through earlier data before reaching the required information. Now let's talk about optical storage device. So guys, optical storage devices are the secondary memory devices which stores the data digitally on optical discs using laser beams, and the data is stored in the form of tiny microscopic patterns called pits and lands on the surface of the disk. Okay, and during the reading process, a laser beam is directed onto the disk surface. The laser detects the difference between pits and lands and then converts these patterns into binary data 0 and 1, which the computer can understand. And optical storage devices are non-volatile. Remember that, which means that the information stored remains even when the power supply is removed. And they are commonly used for storing software, music, operating systems, installation files, backups, and archival data. I hope till now you remember these points. I am talking about repeated points. So in this CD, or it also stands for compact disc. It is an, just remember its definition at least. So it is an optical storage device which uses laser technology to store and retrieve digital information, and it was originally developed for storing digital audio, but later become widely used for storing software, documents, images, and other types of data. A standard CD has a storage capacity of approximately 700 MB, which was considered a large amount of storage when CD were introduced. And CD became finally extremely popular at the time because they provide better durability and higher storage capacity as compared to the floppy disks. And there's some other types of CDs. These so that are CD-ROM, CDR, which stands for compact disc recordable, CDRW, compact disc rewritable, etc. Now let's talk about DVD. DVD stands for digital versatile disc. It is an advanced optical storage device which developed as an improvement over CD. DVDs use also laser technology similar to CD, but they provide much higher storage capacity due to improved data recording techniques and smaller data patterns. A standard single layered DVD can store approximately 4.7 GB of data, while dual layer DVD can store around 8.5 GB. DVDs becomes widely popular for storing high quality movies, software applications, games. I hope you remember that in your age also about DVDs for storing games in your computer and large data files. So next is Blu-ray Disc. So a Blu-ray Disc is an advanced optical storage device which uses a blue-violet laser beam to read and write data. It was developed as an important improvement over CD and DVDs to provide much higher storage capacity and better performances. The name Blu-ray comes from the blue-violet laser technology which used in device. A blue-violet laser has a shorter wavelength than thread laser used in CD and DVDs, which allows the data to be stored more closely together. And this increases the amount of information which can be stored on a single disk. And Blu-ray discs are mainly used for storing high definition movies, large software applications, video games again, and high quality multimedia content. And their size can be 25 GB of data, while dual layer disk can store around 50 GB or more. Now let's talk about solid state storage devices. So guys, now here we will talk about this SSD, but this but first let's talk about solid state storage devices. So we can say that at least know the definition. So these are the modern secondary storage devices that store data using electronic memory chips instead of mechanical parts or optical technology. And these devices use flash memory, which is a type of non-volatile memory which can store information permanently even when the power supply is removed. Unlike magnetic storage devices such as hard disk drives, solid state storage devices do not contain moving components like spinning disks or read-write heads because they provide faster performance, lower power consumptions, better durability, and silent operations. And we can say that solid state storage technology has become extremely important in modern computing because users require faster computers, quick application loading, shorter boot times, and reliable storage solution today. So, if we talk about its common examples of solid state storage devices, so they are SSD, pen drive, and memory card. SSD stands for solid state drive. It is a type of secondary storage device which stores the data using flash memory chips. Remember that as a definition. So what I was saying, a SSD is a type of secondary storage device which stores data using flash memory chips Instead of magnetic disks, it is designed to perform the same functions as the hard disk drive but provides significantly faster data access and better durability. SSD, we can say that, stores the information electronically using memory cells, which, which retains the electrical charge, which representing the binary data. And since SSD do not contain mechanical components, they can read and write data much faster than traditional HDDs, hard disk drives. And SSDs are commonly used as the primary storage device in modern computers because they improve the overall system performance. They allows the faster operating systems startup, quicker application loading, and smoother multitasking. Multitasking. Sorry. So next is pen drive. As you know, so before explaining the pen drive, at least we should know the advantages of SSD. So it can be, it provides, so if we explain it in some simple ones, we can say that it provides faster data access as compared to HDD. It also provides faster boot time, and it also improves the application performance. As in this, we can say that programs installation on SSDs open faster and run more smoothly because the data can be accessed, because of that data can be accessed more quickly. And it also makes the power consumption much lower. Apart from that, you talk about its disadvantages, that will be its higher cost as compared to HDD. Now next is pen drive. So pen drive, or we also know it as USB. So a USB flash drive is a portable secondary storage device which uses flash memory chips to store digital data electronically, and it connects to a computer or any other devices through a universal serious bus, which is stand for USB port. So unlike traditional magnetic storage devices, USB flash drives do not contain moving parts, and in this data is stored in memory cells using electrical charges, which allows the information to remain stored even when the device is disconnected from the power. And USB flash drives, I mean pen drive, are available in different storage capacities, as you know that, which range from few gigabytes to several hundred gigabytes. They are widely used because they provide a simple and convenient method of carrying data from one system to another. Okay, so guys, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to me. Bye bye.